Hello and welcome to episode 7 of this FM24 tutorial series, just taking you through some of the simpler aspects of the game to hopefully give you an understanding of what all the tabs are, make it a little bit less complex and help you find your feet and get your save going in Football Manager. So next one we're looking at today is looking at the training. I'll be honest, it's not something I'll get overly involved in. You can, and I'll occasionally dip in here and just change one or two blocks. It looks a lot more complicated than it actually is, but it's a really good page just to give you an outlay of what your players are doing on a week-to-week basis and finding ways to alleviate risks to injuries and to refine tactics and build your strength in areas that you've been weakened in, particularly if it's something that's picked up in the data hub. Appreciating we haven't been through the data hub yet because we've got no match data to look at, but this is what you're immediately met with when you go on a training screen. So you've got who's responsible for it, which is currently us, and again it's another way you can delegate responsibility to others if you wish. I quite often do, certainly at the start of the game, just to get things taken over, and then I might take control of some individual training aspects as we move on, but again absolute personal preference to what you want to do in there. The primary tactic that you're training, like we did before, we created 3 tactics. We're still sticking with the original one we created. That's going to be our primary tactic, and the other ones are going to be trained as secondaries, which is useful, especially if you want to switch tactics throughout the game or throughout the season, if your forms dip in or if you think you need some more firepower up front, etc. A little snapshot of your training happiness. Overall, everyone's happy. Your training performances. This is where I mentioned in the previous video about praising players who have performed well, looking at the training performance. I tend to sort this by training rating, and for me, if you're getting in the high 7s, 8s, you can right click on them, you can interact with them, and you can say speak about praise player, praise conduct, or praise training within that window. And you also get an option when you get your training reports back in who your top performers are. You can do it from there as well, but a really good way to boost morale. Other part on there is medical centre, risks to your injuries, etc. Now, this is something, it's unavoidable, especially when you get to the December periods, if you're playing in England, etc., and you get lots of games coming thick and fast. You want to play your best players. You're going to have to play some of them with a degree of injury risk, but you can manage it through the medical center screens and through here by just keeping an eye on them, and you'll see later on in the rest tab, you can rest players to let them get their fitness back. But that's the overall snapshot. Now, when you're looking at your week by week here, and this is the week you've got, anything that you can click on is something that you can change. So whereas we have a rest day there after match tactics before you do your match focus, you can go in there and you could put in an additional bit of training. So team bonding is normally a good one, but we've had the maximum number of team bondings for that section. If you can do community outreach, it will tell you what gets impacted. So your attributes of teamwork will get put up, your team cohesion will get slightly increased, but your condition of your players will be slightly reduced. So there's always going to be some positive impacts which will be in green, and then maybe some negative impacts in there. Again, you could go for quickness, your acceleration, agility and pace will go up on a lot of your players. However, you're going to increase your fatigue and you're going to greatly increase your injury risk and reduce your condition of your players. So always be very careful in what you're doing and make sure you weigh up the pros and cons of them. So tactically, you might do some defensive shadow play. Again, all your conditions going to go down, but you're going to increase your team cohesion. You're going to increase a lot of your anticipation and teamwork and defensive positioning. So play about with them, see which blocks you like. Part of your evaluation of the squad will help you pick out what you want to do from that. We'll put that extra block in there and see how it settles. But again, that's a week by week view you get there, so you'd have to come in here every 7 days to kind of stay on top of that. You can, however, go into the training calendar and you can go much further in advance. So again, that's the week we were looking at on the previous screen. We can now go by the rest of the weeks in the month, so we can look ahead at what games are coming up. If there's something we really want to practice for, you might have a big game coming up, you want to do a lot of defensive training first. This will enable you to tailor that. You can look miles ahead, you can see the plans that are in there already all the way through. That's because it's currently done by the coaches. You can look at some schedules. There's lots of preset schedules, so you've got your heavy tactical blocks for what you want to do. So there's a tactical early no matches program. If you just want to get your tactical built up, it'll tell you what it is in there. So you're doing lots of works on acceleration, agility, etc. in there. Outfield, you could do some, again, more focuses on there. And you can take one of these models, and I would always say try and play with these ones first. So a big match preparation for one big match. There you go, you've got a match coming up. That's what you want to do. Build yours around that. Make a few minor tweaks in there. Like for example, this one you could probably boost it with some team bonding, slightly reducing condition, but it's going to get your players up. Tailor it yourself, and then you can either save your block as a new one, create a new schedule, and make one exactly what you want and add it there, or you can just keep using the presets as you go through. But that enables you to kind of plan out your calendar week by week or month by month, whichever one you fancy, to sort out your squad. The other option is you just delegate that out. So I am going to delegate both of them out for now. Might review that later in the season, but currently I'm just going to let them do it because I'm going to concentrate on other aspects. The other bits you can look at is your units. So your players are going to be split into defensive, attacking and goalkeeping units. That's the players you got at your club. You can move them around if you want, but generally that's pretty much sorted for you. It gives you an overview of what position they're currently training for, etc. And your general injury stats, which you can see on the other one. So it's not a page I look at particularly much. Match preparation, again, if there's anything you're specifically looking at on that focus session before the match, you can come in here and tweak them. Again, playing with a primary tactic, your set piece routines. Into the mentoring page, again, it's not one I overly mess with. You can create a new group. So if we create this for strikers, for example, we might want to create a mentoring group of strikers, and we can add players from that. So you might want to say, well, we want Barini in there. So we'll add Barini. Who else would we want in there? Let's get De Luca in there and Esposito. So we can create a little group like that, and that's a little mentoring group of who we got in there, what personalities they are. Now, you can spend ages tweaking out the perfect groups for yourself, or like I do, I'll just get the assistant to do it, and he will generate a set of mentoring groups for you, named as what you want. How they do it, I'm not sure. I'm sure there's some kind of stat-based thing in there where if you've got a really good coach, it'll make it a bit more specific for maximum benefits. But again, I tend to just let the assistant do it because it is a lot of additional work if you're not fully understanding what you're getting out of it, and it's not something I'm really that au fait with. But I know it is important, certainly when you're trying to change some of your personalities and have an influence on some of those negative personalities. It's worth just putting them in a mentoring group to see if you can tweak it out of them. Onto the individual training. This is the one I use the most out of all of them, especially on the youth intake, say for example, where I might want to retrain a player in a specific position. This is your individual training. So at the minute we've got Gerard Yepes highlighted. He's currently doing a defensive midfield for his playing position. He's got no additional focus as it currently stands, but if we wanted to, we could try and give him some extra endurance training because he's playing in the middle. I'm not going to do it because we've put it to the assistant, but you could take control of his individual player. You can either take that specific individual player, the individual players as a whole, or all of the training. But that's what we're going to do, and we're going to let the assistant manager determine what he's doing. Gives you a snapshot of where they are, what their tactical familiarities are within the formation that you've currently got selected, a bit on medical, etc. And yeah, a really good snapshot. And you can look by player all the way down. And I predominantly use this to make sure the player's training in the position I want him to play in. Really useful if you want to change a player's position, because you can give him some training ahead of playing in there longer term to make him become a natural. Onto the rest tab then. If you've got players that's got a huge increase of injury risk, you can recommend them for some rests. So he's on normal intensity. You can give him no pitch or gym work for a number of days, half intensity, or you can leave it with your trainers. I tend to just manage it without coming to this screen. So if, for example, on my squad view or tactics is the one I use the most, I had a player that wasn't particularly fit, I would just leave him out the squad, or I'd put him on the bench and I would manage it that way. However, the training page is there for you if you want to sort out rests for players. and you can even interact with a player and tell him you wish to rest him. Other times your coaching staff might come up to you within your inbox and say they recommend resting a player. Again, it's entirely up to you. You can rest them. Sometimes they'll be happy with it, sometimes they won't. It can have an impact on your morale side, but also you've got to bear in mind if you're going to lose that player for a number of games, especially if them games are important in either a promotion push or a cup run. So just take that into account. And the final one on there on the training is your coaches and what their workloads are. So again, currently got 2 in the defending, 2 in possession, 2 in attacking, and it gives you a rough breakdown of how effective they are within that. So you can see if we had the extra 6 coaches, the workload would be spread better and the star ratings would be slightly higher on what they're achieving per position. So that's training done in a nutshell. Have fun with it. I would advise that you just let it run on its own course with your coaches initially, and then once you've got a couple of games under your belt and you've got your squad all settled up and everything else is kind of taking care of itself, is just take control of it for a little while and see how it works out for you. See how it affects your players' morale, because they'll very quickly come to you and say they're not happy with training if you get it wrong. But hopefully that served as a good update for you. Hopefully that's helped you understand training a little bit better. Certainly most of your experience is going to come from playing with it and getting it wrong, and every time you get it wrong you'll learn a little bit of a lesson along the way. So until next time, enjoy yourselves, enjoy saves, and I will get ready for the next one. Take care.